You may find on your tables a little jar of some jelly beans. I just invite everyone to get a little jelly bean from the plate on their table. Don't worry if you've already eaten them. But if you have got them there, we are aware it's 2 o'clock and you've heard some amazing things, and you may just want to now cruise out into, to about 5 o'clock. So we're going to try and keep you interested. And I'm going to tell you about this little fella. Mine in here is called Arnie, okay? He's Arnie. Imagine we're here, we're having a nice chilled afternoon. What if suddenly something sudden, traumatic, shocking happened? The roof fell in, someone burst in shouting. I wonder what your reaction would be. Possibly some of you would stand up and try and do something immediately. Some would sit frozen to the spot, and some would dash for the exits. All because of our little friend Arnie. Arnie the amygdala. He's a powerful little fella, and he sits in our brains. And he is the source of our fight, flight, and freeze response. It's a survival instinct when we hit danger. Whatever your reaction would have been in that moment, you'd have done it without thinking. I want us to move to the 23rd of March 2020, the first day of national lockdown. We are a family of 6. I have 4 adopted children, and like many people, we were like, we can do this. We will get up. We will put on Joe Wicks. We will have made banana bread by this afternoon. We will keep on top of learning. That was at 9 o'clock. At 9:05, my house looked like that. And then I took photos for posterity. And that's not untypical of my house. We have 4 children with a variety of diagnoses and not, and who have been care, trauma and attachment experienced. We started our adoption journey 18 years ago, and it's been an 18-year journey, ongoing, of discovery about the effects of trauma and attachment alongside neurodiversity. For 10 years, I didn't know anything about that stuff. But for 10 years, I just felt like a rubbish parent. And at the same time, in our community in East Hull, where I live and work, surrounded by families who are experiencing the same thing. This is a hidden crisis across our country. Families, parents who are often scared, who are struggling, and who are often full of shame because our family life does not look like what we see on the social media of other people. So the ideas one came along, and along with Tricia, we worked on a program called Oxygen, based on the idea that you have to be well yourself to look after other people. The strain on parents who parent children of neurodiversity and trauma and attachment experience is big. And so we wanted to put something together for our local parents. So I put out a leaflet with the following questions. Does your child seem particularly anxious or angry? Would you like to try out some new ideas? Would you like to get better at talking to your school about what's going on? And then for me, the key ones. Have you struggled as a parent at times? Would it help to be part of a group who get it? And would you like to feel better than you do right now? The key was that we were going to be a non-judgment space to challenge how we parent, but to accept us in each other as we are. So we've been meeting about once a week on a Monday morning. There's always a brew, there's always cake. There have been about 12 parents involved, so we're much smaller than a lot of amazing projects we've heard about. Although out of the 12 parents, we do have 40 kids between us. And we've been doing a bit of brain science along with chatting and debriefing over the weekend. We've been learning about therapeutic parenting, things like Arnie the amygdala, thinking about how we respond as well. That's the first starting point. How do we respond to situations? Therapeutic parenting is something that now is given that adoptive and foster parents learn. But actually, a lot of our birth families have been involved with being put on parenting courses that just don't seem to work. And the simple fact that we now know is that a brain that's experienced trauma and attachment issues is rewired. It looks different. And actually, this little picture is one of the exercises we do to show that. So the tree is the brain, The lizard at the bottom is our reptile brain. That's the fight, flight, freeze. That's the bit that a little fly goes along, we're getting it. That's the bit that makes you jump out the road when a car comes. And then the monkey in the tree, that's our big emotions. And then the very last thing that is developed, and the thing that gets lost very quickly, is the little owl. The one at the top that looks around and goes, what is going on? What do I see? So actually, when we see that our families, our children at home and in school are having these huge meltdowns, what's going on? What's going on is that the lizard is in operation, the monkey, the big emotions, without the ability to stop and say, actually, I am safe, I am not at harm, and I can deal with this. And so we've been learning these things as a group of parents, and we've been looking at our own situations, we've been supporting each other, and I'm going to pass over to Tricia now, because she's been such a fundamental part of this as well.
Kathy. So Kathy and I met quite early on in the project, and we had a conversation and got to know one another before I ventured into Kathy's world. And when we were chatting with one another, we found huge similarities between us. I don't have any adopted children. I have 2 children of my own who present their own challenges at times. But what we found was that before I came to work at the university, I was a primary school teacher for nearly 20 years, and I was a special educational needs coordinator for the last 8 to 10 years of that career. And we began talking about what we'd experienced, what we'd seen, and thinking about what education is doing not only to our children, but to our parents as well, and the families. So what we began to do is think about how we could learn, a bit like some of the projects that we've heard about today, how we can learn from the people who are at the very centre of this. So I went every 4th week to Kathy's group, and I was a little anxious, if I'm perfectly honest, before I went down to East Hull. I thought, I'm not from the north, I'm from the south. And people make assumptions about people who speak with a southern accent. And I thought, are they going to accept me? Oh, this person coming from the university who probably thinks she knows best. So I had my own anxieties when I went into the room. So I sort of gave a little of myself and my background, and very quickly those parents latched onto, she's been a teacher, she's been a SENCO, she's seen children like mine. So what I wanted to do was really understand their background. So we started, and we were talking in our table earlier, about some asset mapping. Quite often, these parents have been told what they're doing wrong, a bit like Kathy said, or they feel that they're being judged for what they're doing. So we started with, I asked them the questions, what 5 positive things can you write down about the relationship with your child? And these were some of the responses that came back. They seemed quite surprised that we asked that question about, well, what's positive? You're here to help me overcome those difficulties. I want to talk to you about those challenges. But we couldn't do that until we could work out what worked well. So those kind of things, the loving, the caring, the joy. And when they began to speak about this, they became really enthused about their environment and their relationship with their children. So we moved on from that to identifying, so we'd identified what was working or what they loved about their relationship with their child. But then we moved on to identifying where they were now and where they wanted to be. And actually what we found out quite quickly is they were quite realistic about where they wanted to be. They weren't reaching for the moon. They weren't sort of having that blue sky thinking about in the ideal world. So we used this sort of blob tree thing. And they identified where they were now and where they wanted to be. So these are some of the quotes that we got from the parents here. And they were really quite emotional for me. They touched my heart. I just want my son back to how he used to be. We used to be real close, good friends. I was his best friend at one point. Then obviously he's been through what he's been through and he's just drifted away. That inference to, as Kathy says, something traumatic had happened in their life and it had altered their whole relationship. And this one really as well, because at the moment I feel like I'm swinging from branch to branch. I'm not getting nowhere. That sense that I'm lost. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do in the future. And this was quite early on in our project. I'm trying to remember how long. Our project has been about 15 months, is it, Kathy? So I was collecting data, if you like to call it that. But really what I was doing is I just placed my phone in the middle of the table, and we had these conversations. And then I went back and I listened to those conversations and I transcribed them, and I began in my research head doing a little bit of what thematic analysis, looking for what were the big themes that were coming out of it, so that I could use that to chat with Kathy about the direction we might go in, and then use that as an impetus when we went next time. So Kathy was doing all of the work on the therapeutic parenting techniques whilst I was back at the university. So then I began to think, well, okay, we've got these blob trees and we've got where I want to be, but let's try and break it down a little bit more. So we used unfinished sentences. So when my child is demonstrating challenging behaviour, I feel. We wanted to know how the parents felt, so that then we could maybe build on what we could do to help and support them. Stressed, sad, challenged, helpless, anxious, all the things you would expect. When my child's demonstrating challenging behaviour, I want to be able to. These were their words. So many times, as Kathy said, these parents have been to parenting courses or such like, but there is this sort of feeling that you drop in and you tell them what to do. We were trying to reverse that to understand what was going on in their lives and get them to identify what they could do to help themselves. It isn't for me or for Kathy to say, this is what you should do. I'm not walking in their shoes. So they wanted to cope more, manage it appropriately, stay calm and react with energy in a creative way. And finally, because they'd latched onto the fact that I'd been a teacher, actually they began to talk about the schools, which wasn't what we thought at the very beginning of that. So what we did here is, what do you want the school to do? Engage more with the children's needs and feelings, recognise triggers, understand what's going on at home too. She says, trying to move it on.
Meeting new friends and finding out I'm not the only one going through it.
I've enjoyed rather good getting to know people, learning ways to help my autistic son, and meeting new friends.
Meeting new people, learning new tips in order to help my family, and getting away from the hustle and bustle for a few hours.
So it moved on before I said, but these were some of the words of the parents that were in our group. So what have you enjoyed about it? Then they answered questions on what have you learnt or done differently.
Everyone's an individual, I don't always have to have a label.
So I've learned not to swing the shout as much, instead to use distraction and learn when to pick your battles, and it's going really well.
I've learned to use different coping mechanisms, listen to them instead of screaming at them, and follow for what you're going to say, don't just do it.
I'm not sure why some people are on their side, but anyway. So what still needs to happen to help your family flourish?
I think schools need to listen more to parents and the children and assess each situation based on the child's individual needs rather than as a whole.
We need a bit more help to understand the specific needs instead of getting popped off all the time.
So the last thing we did, and you've got something in your pack as well, is that we wanted to think about what we could do with this, where we could take it. So we began to put together the parents' thoughts about it. And I began to think, well, how could we use their words constructively and share it beyond the group? So what we did is we created a leaflet here. Maybe not going to move on. Oh, there we go. So we found that there were 3 key findings: things relating to the children, things relating to the parents, and things about processes. And what I did is I went away and I pulled out all of the words on this leaflet are directly from the parents in our group. So I brought back a black and white copy with some pictures, some images, and the parents sort of said, I don't like that picture, or that one reminds me of NSPCC, and I took it away and changed it, brought it back, and then they said, well, I'm not sure the wording's right on here, or the order of the wording. This one at the top was further down, and they said, no, that needs to go up near the top. That's the most important one. So the parents have constructed this. They've put it together. And one of the most moving things for me was when one of the parents said, I feel so proud to have been part of this project. I've never been involved in anything like that before. And that really was meaningful for me. I didn't want it to be about me, I wanted it to be about the parents. So one thing that we have done following this is that Kathy, myself, and a couple of other colleagues in the university, we've put on a mental health workshop, and we invited head teachers, pastoral support staff, and teachers to come along, listen to some of the research we've been doing about mental health. We had an ex-health worker, we had psychologists there, and then we did some practical activities, not dissimilar to the ones we use for our research, to get schools to think about how they could, rather than assuming they know what the mental health issues are that are going on in schools, to actually engage with the young people themselves to find out. So they went away from that. We've also passed out the leaflet to some of our trainee teachers and our nursery nurses who study on a degree at the university, and I'm following up with them in 6 months' time to see actually has this helped. We wanted it to be a quick, easy way. It's no good giving them some lengthy document that they've got to read about how they can make life better. So this was like quick touch points, and actually we've had some very positive feedback.
Just to finish, it's interesting to think about, has this project worked? We are small, and we said that from the start that we would be, and we've had people come and go, because that's what life is like in many of our communities. You know, I could reel off the situations that have happened to and with the 12 people in that group, and you would think it was unbelievable unless you're in those communities, in which case you won't, you'll think it's normal. But, you know, to do with finance and housing and relationships and schooling. And the question, the initial question of this was, can a group of people who are still living and parenting within trauma learn how to do so therapeutically? Because it's quite counterintuitive and it's quite hard. Hand on heart, I can't give you an answer to that. I don't know. But what I do know, and this is where I'll get emotional, Sarah, is that there's 12 incredible people. And the other day, I was having a bit of a moan about one of my sons, and one of the mums went, "Kathy, you know what you should be doing, don't you?" And I thought, yeah, she's got me, because she was saying, look, you need to do this therapeutically. And the fact they say, you know, look, we don't shout as much, we try and look at it, we try and look at the bigger picture, is huge. And there's so many organisations who are dealing in this room with trauma and stress, and I just feel very proud to be a small part of that. I'm very, very proud of the 12 people that have been involved with it with us.